Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Oakland Raiders and the Detroit Lions in their Week 11 matchup played November 22nd, 2015. We're going to go over the scores and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. So the first score of the game came with under 8 minutes left in the first quarter as Matt Prater hit a 29-yard field goal to make it 3-0 Detroit over Oakland. So then with a half a minute still left in the first, Matt Prater hit a 41-yard field goal to make it 6-0 Lions over the Raiders. So that would do it for the first. Then in the second quarter, Prater hit a 51-yard field goal to make it 9-0 Detroit over Oakland. And that was with just seconds left in the second quarter. And so that would be the score at halftime, as the Lions had scored 9 straight points to open up this game. So then in the third quarter, the Raiders would finally get on the scoreboard with 10.5 left still in the third, as Latavius Murray punched it in on a 1-yard touchdown run. Sebastian Janikowski added the extra point, and it was now just a 2-point lead for the Lions with the score 9-7. The Raiders would then take the lead with just under 4 minutes still left in the third with a 48-yard field goal by Janikowski that made it 10-9. Janikowski then added a 56-yard field goal with just 15 seconds left in the third to extend the Raiders' lead to 4 with the score 13-9. So that was the score after 3. Then in the fourth quarter, the Lions would take back the lead when Matthew Stafford ran it in from 5 yards out. Prater added the extra point, and it was now 16-13 with the Lions up by a field goal. So now the Raiders would end up giving up a safety on a penalty as they were backed up against their own end zone, and a holding call would result in a penalty because they had started the play on the 2-yard line, and with the holding penalty, 2 points went on the board for the Lions, and that would make it 18-13. Detroit would then take over, and they would eat up the next 7.5 minutes of game clock as they got all the way down, knocking on the door as they're on, I believe, the 3-yard line, set up for possibly a touchdown, but instead Stafford took a knee to run out the clock as they didn't add insult to injury, as the saying goes, and the Lions win this one by 5 points, and they had gotten down to the 2, but then they ended up with that last play on the 3. But either way, they have now got 3 wins on the season, as they're now 3-7 on the year, 2-3 at home. The Raiders now lose their third game straight, as they're 2-3 on the road, 4-6 on the year, and this one really does hurt Oakland quite a bit, is this loss really kind of takes them out of any kind of contention for a wild card. Technically, they are still in it, but they had a chance here to win and be tied with Kansas City, who's on a winning streak, but now they trail the Chiefs by a game out of second, and now they're 4 games behind Denver, who is at first place in the AFC West. And the Lions, of course, they're still in the basement in the North, but with the Bears losing to the Broncos, Detroit has a chance to not be the worst team in their division, as the Bears are just 1 game ahead of the Lions. But the Lions coming up with the win, and it really was more of a loss for the Raiders than it was a win for the Lions. Of course, any win is going to help Codwell. And see, of course, the Lions coming off the big win against the Packers, and now they beat the Raiders, another team that had some playoff hopes. They were still playing for the playoffs going into this game, but now, of course, a big factor is that they did not have Aldon Smith, and that definitely hurt them. But Aldon Smith plays defense, he doesn't play offense, and the offense really did not get things going in this game. They definitely were struggling as the Lions were able to shut down Derek Carr, and of course Latavius Murray as well. But Matthew Stafford in this game, 22 of 35, 282 passing yards. Amir Abdullah had 12 carries for 44 yards in this game. He also had 1 reception for 2 yards, which gave him 46 total yards on the game. Stafford had 31 yards off of 6 carries, including that 5-yard touchdown run. Megatron Calvin Johnson Jr., 5 receptions for 88 yards. Golden Tate, 8 receptions for 73 yards. And Theo Riddick, 5 receptions for 72 yards. He also had 6 carries for 14 yards, giving him 86 total yards on the game. And for the Raiders, Derek Carr, just 13 of 25, 169 passing yards. Latavius Murray, 13 carries for 28 yards and a touchdown. And Seth Roberts, 2 receptions for 54 yards. Michael Crabtree, just 6 receptions for 50 yards. And Amari Cooper, only 1 catch for 4 yards in this game. And for the kickers, Matt Prater had 3 for 3 on the field goals, 1 for 1 on the extra points. Sebastian Janikowski, 2 for 2 on the field goals, 1 for 1 on the extra points. And for the defense, for Detroit, Diggs had a forced fumble, and Ziggy Ansah had a sack. And for the Raiders, Heaney had a sack, as did Malcolm Smith and Mayowa and Autry. So they had 4 sacks for the Raiders. Team stats, 22 first downs for Detroit, 13 first downs for Oakland. On third down, the Lions, 6 of 14, 42% conversion rate, 4 of 11 for Oakland, 36%. Total net yards, 375 for Detroit, 214 for Oakland. On the ground, the Lions netted 109. The Raiders just 50 yards netted on the ground. And through the air, 266 for Detroit, 164 for Oakland. Stafford sacked 4 times, losing a total of 6 yards. Carr sacked just once, losing 5 yards. And the penalties, 7 penalties against the Lions for 55 yards, 6 penalties against the Raiders. Of course, one of the penalties cost them 2 points and resulted in a safety. 3 fumbles for the Raiders, but they did not lose any of those fumbles as they recovered all 3. And in the red zone, Detroit just 1 for 4, 25%. Oakland 1 for 1 for 100%. Of course, they only made the 1 trip to the red zone. In time of possession, 36 minutes, 2 seconds for Detroit, 23 minutes, 58 seconds for the Raiders. And I think people are kind of overreacting somewhat to the Raiders' loss. I actually heard the possibility that the Raiders would pick up Colin Kaepernick in favor over Derek Carr. And David, yeah, of course, over David Carr, right? Derek Carr's brother. But Derek Carr, he had a bad game, yeah. But come on. People are going to have bad games. No one's perfect, other than Carolina and New England at this point in the season. But, you have your bad games. They went into Detroit. It's really hard to figure out how Oakland lost other than, the loss of Aldon Smith. But also, they've got everybody's got issues in terms of injuries and players that aren't able to suit up, but the Raiders really should have been able to go in there and beat the Lions. Of course, the Lions have been underperforming all season, but they were able to step up at least on the defensive end in this game, in this low-scoring game. Both teams were struggling to get the ball into the end zone, even with 4 trips to the red zone. The Lions only come away with the 1 red zone touchdown in the game. And Stafford, ended up with no touchdowns passing. Neither quarterback threw a touchdown. And of course, Stafford did run the ball in for the Lions' only touchdown of the game. And of course, Prater was pretty busy as he ended up with 3 field goals and then that safety, which was kind of a fluke thing. It didn't end up mattering in the end, and the Lions could have put more points on the board. Of course, they elected to just go for the knee there at the end. And that was really the thing they came up with, that huge drive, eating up 7.5 minutes. They ate up half of the final quarter in the, down the stretch there. So that was a big drive for the Lions. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.